Lock the doors. The command cut through the ballroom so sharply that even the string quartet stopped playing mid-note. Crystal glasses froze halfway to lips. Conversations died instantly beneath the gold chandeliers of Whitmore Grand Hotel. Adrian Whitmore stood near the center of the room, his gray suit perfectly tailored, one hand clenched so tightly around the champagne glass that his knuckles had turned white. Then the glass slipped from his fingers and shattered across the marble floor. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Because Adrian Whitmore never lost control. Not in public. Not ever. But right now, his eyes were locked on a woman standing beside the flower installation near the ballroom entrance. Claire Bennett froze under the weight of his stare. Her fingers tightened around the ribbon she had been tying around a vase of white roses. She had no idea why one of the richest men in New York was looking at her like she had just walked out of a grave. "Sir?" one of the board members said carefully. Adrian never looked away from Claire. "I said everyone out?" The room erupted into nervous motion. Luxury heels clicked rapidly against marble. Executives exchanged uneasy glances while security quietly ushered guests toward the exits. Within seconds, the glamorous charity gala dissolved into confusion and whispers. Claire's pulse hammered in her ears. She had only taken this last-minute florist job because her father's hospital bill was overdue again. She wasn't supposed to even be inside the ballroom. She was supposed to stay invisible. But Adrian Whitmore kept staring at her like he knew her. Or worse, like he remembered her. Finally, the massive ballroom doors shut with a heavy thud. Then came the sound that made Claire's stomach tighten. Click. The lock. Silence swallowed the room whole. The faint scent of roses mixed with expensive cologne and something colder, older. Adrian took a slow step toward her. Tall. Controlled. Dangerous in the quietest way possible. Claire instinctively stepped backward until her hip brushed against the flower table behind her. "Where did you get that perfume?" he asked. His voice was low, calm, almost emotionless. But something underneath it sounded broken. Claire blinked. "What?" "Your perfume." His jaw tightened. "Answer me." Claire swallowed hard. "It was my grandmother's." Adrian's expression shifted instantly. Not softer. Worse. Like something inside him had just cracked open after years of being buried alive. He looked away for one brief second, exhaling slowly through his nose like he was trying to steady himself. Claire could suddenly hear the distant hum of Manhattan traffic 30 floors below them. "That scent," Adrian murmured quietly, almost to himself. "That scent hasn't existed in 20 years. Claire frowned. "I don't understand." Adrian stepped closer again. Close enough now that she could see faint shadows beneath his steel-gray eyes. A man who hadn't slept peacefully in years. "What was your grandmother's name?" Claire hesitated. "Rose Bennett." The color drained from Adrian's face. For the first time since she'd seen him on magazine covers and business interviews, Adrian Whitmore looked genuinely afraid. Not of her. Of the memory attached to her. His eyes slowly lowered to the small silver perfume bottle sitting beside Claire's flower kit. Vintage glass. Tiny engraved roses along the cap. Adrian stared at it like it was a loaded weapon. Then he whispered the words that made Claire's blood run cold. "My mother had the exact same bottle." Claire stared at him, unsure whether to run or apologize for something she did not even understand. The enormous ballroom suddenly felt smaller than an elevator. Too quiet. Too warm. Adrian Whitmore slowly reached toward the silver perfume bottle beside her flowers, but his hand stopped inches away like he was afraid to touch it. "Where did your grandmother get this?" he asked softly. Claire shook her head. "I do not know. She made perfumes by hand in Connecticut when I was little. After she passed away, this was all I had left." Adrian's eyes darkened. Connecticut. The word seemed to hit him harder than it should have. He turned away abruptly and walked toward the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. Rain streaked the glass outside, blurring the city lights into pale gold smears. Claire watched his reflection carefully. Billionaires were supposed to look untouchable. Controlled. Adrian Whitmore looked like a man standing one sentence away from falling apart. My mother used to wear that scent every day, he said quietly. White jasmine, amber, vanilla oil, and 1 drop of orange blossom. Claire blinked in surprise because he was exactly right. Even down to the orange blossom. How do you know that? Adrian gave a faint laugh without humor. Because I spent half my childhood following that perfume through empty hallways. Silence settled again between them. Claire noticed his loosened tie now, the faint crease near his collar, the exhaustion beneath the billionaire polish. Up close, Adrian did not look cold anymore. He looked tired. Deeply tired. I think I should leave, Claire said carefully. Adrian turned immediately. No. The answer came too fast. Too sharp. He exhaled slowly, forcing calm back into his voice. Please! That single word changed everything. Not command. Not control. A request. Claire hesitated. You are scaring me a little. Adrian looked down at the shattered champagne glass still glittering across the marble floor. I know. His honesty caught her off guard. He walked back toward her slowly, stopping a few feet away this time. My mother disappeared when I was 19 years old, he said. No goodbye. No explanation. The next morning her closet was empty and every bottle of her perfume was gone. Claire frowned. Disappeared? Adrian nodded once. The newspapers called it depression. My father called it emotional instability. The board called it unfortunate timing. His jaw tightened. I called it a lie. Claire felt a chill run through her arms despite the warmth of the ballroom. Adrian glanced again at the silver bottle beside her flowers. That perfume vanished with her. Maybe lots of people wore it, Claire offered gently. Adrian looked at her then. Really looked at her. No, he said quietly. My mother created it herself. Claire's breath caught. The air suddenly felt heavier between them. Impossible connections threading together too quickly. Adrian reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out an old photograph, edges worn from years of being handled. He held it out carefully. Claire took it with trembling fingers. The picture showed a beautiful blonde woman standing beside a garden fountain sometime in the late 1990s. Elegant. Graceful. Soft-eyed. And standing beside her was another woman Claire recognized instantly. Her grandmother. Younger. Smiling. Claire looked up slowly. That is Rose Bennett, Adrian whispered. And she was the last person ever seen with my mother. Claire could barely breathe as she stared at the photograph in her hands. Her grandmother looked at least 30 years younger, standing beside Adrian's mother beneath a stone fountain covered in ivy. Both women were smiling at something outside the frame like they shared a secret nobody else understood. Claire slowly looked back up at Adrian. My grandmother never talked about wealthy families, she whispered. She lived quietly. She made perfumes in her kitchen and sold flowers at church events. Adrian watched her carefully, as if trying to decide whether she was lying. Rose Bennett worked inside the Whitmore estate for almost 15 years, he said. Not as a maid. Not as a servant. My mother trusted her more than anyone. Claire shook her head immediately. No. That cannot be right. I spent months digging through archived payroll records after my mother disappeared. Adrian's voice lowered. Rose Bennett's name vanished the exact same week. Claire looked down at the photograph again, confusion tightening in her chest. Memories suddenly surfaced without warning. Her grandmother locking certain drawers at night. Old perfume recipes hidden inside books. The way she sometimes stared out the kitchen window whenever the news mentioned New York. Claire had never questioned any of it before. She told me wealthy people ruined lives, Claire murmured quietly. Adrian gave a bitter smile. She was not wrong. Rain tapped softly against the ballroom windows while the city glowed beneath the storm outside. Somewhere far below, horns echoed through Manhattan traffic. But inside the ballroom, everything felt suspended in time. Adrian stepped toward one of the banquet chairs and sat down slowly for the first time that night. The movement alone shocked Claire. Men like Adrian Whitmore did not sit during confrontations. They towered, controlled, dominated. But now he looked exhausted. "After my mother disappeared," he said quietly, "my father ordered every trace of her removed from the estate." Claire frowned. "Why?" Adrian stared down at his hands. "Because she was about to expose something." Silence. Heavy. Dangerous. Claire carefully placed the photograph on the flower table. "Expose what?" Adrian looked up at her again, and for the first time since she met him, fear flickered openly across his face. "I still do not know." Claire wrapped her arms around herself instinctively. This was no longer about a perfume. No longer about a strange coincidence at a gala. Somehow, her grandmother had been connected to one of the most powerful families in America. And Adrian Whitmore had spent 20 years chasing ghosts. "Why are you telling me all this?" she asked softly. Adrian held her gaze for several long seconds before answering. "Because when you walked into that ballroom tonight," his voice caught slightly, barely noticeable, "for one second, I thought my mother had come back." The honesty in his voice hit Claire harder than she expected. Beneath the billionaire reputation, beneath the cold headlines and expensive suits, Adrian suddenly seemed painfully human. Just a son still trapped inside the worst night of his life. Claire looked toward the locked ballroom doors. "I should really go home." Adrian nodded slowly, though disappointment flickered across his expression before he could hide it. "Of course." But neither of them moved. Claire hated how much she noticed the sadness in his eyes now. Hated that she suddenly understood why this massive luxury ballroom felt less like a palace and more like a mausoleum. Adrian stood again, adjusting his cufflinks automatically like he was rebuilding the armor around himself piece by piece. "Tomorrow morning," he said carefully, "I would like to show you something." Claire hesitated. "What?" Adrian glanced toward the silver perfume bottle one last time. "The room my father sealed 20 years ago." Claire barely slept that night. The old photograph sat on her kitchen table beside the silver perfume bottle, while rain tapped softly against her apartment window in Queens. She had spent hours opening drawers, searching through boxes her grandmother left behind, hoping to find something that explained any of this. But there was nothing except old recipes, dried flowers pressed into books, and birthday cards written in Rose Bennett's elegant handwriting. At 6:30 the next morning, a black sedan waited outside her building. Claire almost did not go. She should have said no. She should have stayed away from the billionaire with haunted eyes and impossible questions. Instead, she grabbed the perfume bottle and stepped outside. The drive north was quiet. Manhattan slowly disappeared behind them as the city gave way to winding roads lined with old trees touched by early autumn gold. Adrian sat across from her in the back seat, working through messages on a tablet, every inch the powerful executive again. The man from the ballroom was gone. Or hidden. Claire studied him anyway. Even now, he looked tired. Not physically. Spiritually. Like someone carrying 20 years inside his chest. "You do not have to keep doing this," she said softly. Adrian looked up. "Doing what?" "Chasing ghosts." Something flickered across his expression before disappearing. "You assume I still have a choice." The Whitmore estate appeared 40 minutes later. Claire had expected luxury. She had not expected a place that looked like history itself. Stone walls. Iron gates. Gardens stretching across acres. The mansion sat beneath a gray morning sky like it had been built to survive centuries. Inside, everything felt strangely untouched. Elegant but quiet. Beautiful but cold. Adrian led her upstairs without speaking. Past portraits. Past closed doors. Past rooms that looked unused for years. Finally they stopped at the end of a long hallway. One door remained covered beneath a white dust sheet. Claire noticed immediately that the brass handle had never tarnished. Someone cleaned it regularly. Adrian reached into his pocket and removed an old silver key. His hand paused before the lock. Nobody has entered this room since the day she disappeared, he said quietly. Claire looked at him. Not even you? He shook his head once. The lock clicked. The door opened slowly. Warm sunlight spilled through lace curtains onto a room frozen in time. Books remained open on a chair. A teacup still sat beside the window. Fresh white sheets covered the bed as though someone expected its owner back tomorrow instead of 20 years ago. Claire stepped inside carefully. Then she stopped breathing. On the vanity near the mirror sat 6 perfume bottles. Identical to hers. Same engraved roses. Same silver caps. Adrian stayed near the doorway, watching her. Claire moved closer slowly. One bottle still held a faded cream ribbon tied around the neck. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up. Sewn into the ribbon were tiny embroidered letters. R.B. Rose Bennett. Claire turned around instantly. My grandmother was here. Adrian nodded. Every week. Claire looked around the room again. The scent of jasmine still lingered faintly in the air after all these years. Then her eyes landed on something half hidden beneath the vanity table. A leather notebook. Worn at the edges. She knelt and pulled it free. Gold letters shimmered across the cover. Eleanor Whitmore. Adrian's mother. Claire held the notebook carefully as if touching it too hard might break whatever thread connected the past to this room. Dust shimmered in the sunlight around her while Adrian remained near the doorway, unusually still. The leather cover felt soft from age. Loved. Used often. Claire opened it slowly. The first pages held perfume formulas written in elegant cursive. Jasmine. Amber. Orange blossom. Beside each recipe were notes in 2 different handwritings. One belonged to Eleanor Whitmore. The other stopped Claire's breath. Rose Bennett. Her grandmother's script curved gently across the page exactly the way it had on every birthday card Claire ever received. Adrian moved closer. What is it? Claire turned the notebook toward him. His eyes fixed on the handwriting and went silent. Page after page showed years of friendship preserved in ink. Flower sketches. Perfume blends. Small notes in the margins. Eleanor likes the gardenias stronger this spring. Rose says orange blossom feels like hope. Today Adrian laughed for the first time in weeks. Claire looked up at him. Your mother wrote about you. Adrian froze. She turned another page. There it was. September 1998. Adrian started college today. Pretended he was not nervous. He still wears too much black when he is worried. Claire smiled faintly despite everything. Adrian did not. His eyes remained fixed on the page like he had forgotten how to breathe. Claire kept turning. The entries changed. Became shorter. More urgent. October. I think they know. November. Rose says I should leave. December 3rd. If anything happens, the formulas stay with Rose. Claire's fingers tightened around the paper. The room suddenly felt colder. Adrian reached past her and carefully turned to the final written page. The ink looked rushed. Uneven. Eleanor's handwriting trembled across the paper. Rose, if you are reading this, it means I ran out of time. Keep the bottles safe. One day Adrian will smell the truth before he sees it. Claire stared at the words. Beside her, Adrian slowly sat down on the edge of the bed. He looked nothing like the billionaire from magazine covers now. Just a son holding the last conversation his mother ever had. Claire lowered herself into the chair near the vanity. Either of them spoke for a long time. Wind moved softly through the curtains. Somewhere outside, birds drifted across the gardens. Finally, Adrian looked toward the perfume bottles lined on the vanity. She knew, he whispered. Claire lifted her eyes. Knew what? Adrian swallowed. That she would disappear. Silence settled heavily between them. Then Claire noticed something tucked into the back cover of the notebook. A folded envelope. Cream paper. Sealed with pressed jasmine petals. Her heart began to race. Adrian noticed it too. The name written on the front stopped them both cold. To Adrian. Open only when the scent returns. Adrian stared at the envelope as though opening it might change every memory he had spent 20 years protecting. The pressed jasmine petals had faded to pale ivory with age, but the seal remained untouched. Claire sat quietly beside the vanity, the notebook still resting in her lap. Neither of them moved at first. The room itself seemed to hold its breath. Finally, Adrian reached out. His fingers stopped halfway. "I cannot do it," he said softly. Claire looked up in surprise. "You have waited 20 years. He gave a faint smile that never reached his eyes. "That is exactly why." Claire understood then. He was not afraid of finding nothing. He was afraid of finally finding the truth. She stood and stepped closer. The morning light from the window softened across the room, catching the silver perfume bottles behind them. "Then let us do it together," she said quietly. Adrian looked at her for a long moment before nodding once. The envelope opened with a soft crackle. Inside was a folded letter and a small brass key tied with cream ribbon. Adrian unfolded the paper slowly. His mother's handwriting filled the page. "My dearest Adrian, if you are reading this, then the scent found you. I prayed it would. First, know this. I did not leave because I stopped loving you. I left because staying would have destroyed everything I was trying to protect." Adrian's hand tightened around the paper. Claire remained silent beside him. The letter continued. "Rose knows where the second key belongs. Trust her family when the time comes. Trust the girl carrying the scent. She will not understand why yet." Claire felt her pulse quicken. Adrian kept reading. "There is a hidden room beneath the West Conservatory. The truth is there. So is what they wanted buried. Outside, wind moved through the trees beyond the estate." The room suddenly felt smaller. Adrian lowered the letter slowly. "A hidden room?" Claire whispered. Adrian looked toward the gardens outside the window. "There used to be a glass conservatory on the west side of the property." Claire frowned. "Used to? My father closed it after she disappeared." Silence again. Adrian carefully folded the letter and placed it back inside the envelope. His expression had changed. The grief was still there, but now something else lived beside it. Purpose. Claire noticed the brass key still resting in his palm. Tiny engraved roses circled the top. Exactly like the perfume bottle caps. Suddenly footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Both of them turned. A knock sounded against the bedroom door. "Mr. Whitmore?" a woman's voice called. "The board members have arrived early." Adrian's expression hardened instantly. The armor returned. 5 minutes, he answered without looking away from Claire. The footsteps retreated. Adrian slipped the key into his pocket. "Nobody knows this room is open," he said quietly. Claire nodded. "And nobody knows about the letter." He looked at her carefully. "Claire." It was the first time he had said her name softly. Without distance. Without formality. "If my mother was right." He glanced toward the perfume bottle in her hand. "Then meeting you was never an accident." Before Claire could answer, her phone vibrated inside her coat pocket. One message. Unknown number. "Leave the estate now. Some secrets were meant to stay buried." Claire stared at the message glowing on her phone screen while a cold feeling spread slowly through her chest. Leave the estate now. Some secrets were meant to stay buried. No number. No signature. Just the words. Adrian noticed her expression immediately. "What happened?" Claire hesitated before showing him the phone. His eyes darkened as he read it. The softness from moments ago disappeared. "Who else knows you came here today?" he asked. "Nobody." Claire frowned. "Only the florist company that hired me for the gala." Adrian looked toward the bedroom door. "Delete nothing." He took out his phone and sent a short message before slipping it back into his pocket. "Security will trace it." Claire wrapped her fingers around the silver perfume bottle she had been carrying all morning. Suddenly the room no longer felt safe. The hidden letter. The key. The warning. Everything was moving too quickly. Adrian glanced toward the hallway again. "We need to leave this room." Claire nodded. He carefully returned the letter and notebook to the vanity drawer beneath folded scarves. The perfume bottles remained exactly where they had been for 20 years. Untouched. Waiting. Before leaving, Adrien paused beside his mother's bed. His hand brushed the carved wooden headboard lightly. "I will come back," he said quietly. Claire pretended not to hear. Downstairs, the mansion had transformed. Men in dark suits moved through the hallways. Assistants carried folders. Voices echoed from the West Wing conference room. The Whitmore board meeting had already begun. Adrien slowed near the staircase landing when two older executives crossed the foyer below. One of them stopped mid-conversation after noticing Claire beside him. The man's expression changed instantly. Recognition. Then alarm. He recovered too quickly for anyone else to notice. Anyone except Adrien. "Mr. Whitmore," the executive called with a forced smile. "We were wondering when you would join us." Adrien never looked away from him. "You can wait another 10 minutes. The man nodded and continued walking, but Claire caught him glancing back once. At her. Adrien noticed it too. "Do you know him?" Claire whispered after they disappeared. Adrien's jaw tightened. "That is Charles Holloway." "Who is he?" "He was on the board when my mother vanished." Silence. Claire instinctively held the perfume bottle tighter. Adrien led her away from the foyer and through a side corridor lined with windows overlooking the gardens. Outside, the estate stretched wide beneath pale afternoon light. Then Claire saw it. Beyond rows of hedges stood a glass structure almost completely hidden by ivy. The conservatory. Her heartbeat quickened. Adrien followed her gaze. "West side," he said quietly. "The hidden room is under there." Claire turned toward him. "Then we should go now." Adrien looked toward the conference wing where voices drifted faintly through the hall. Duty pulled one way. The past pulled another. For several seconds he said nothing. Then he reached into his pocket and pressed the small brass key into Claire's hand. Her eyes widened. "What are you doing?" "If something delays me," he said softly, "you keep going." Claire looked down at the key resting against her palm. Warm from his hand. Heavy with 20 years of silence. Suddenly footsteps sounded behind them. They turned. A woman stood at the end of the corridor. Elegant navy suit. Silver hair. Calm expression. She looked directly at Claire. Then at the perfume bottle. "You must be Rose Bennett's granddaughter," she said quietly. "I have been waiting a very long time to meet you." The woman stepped closer with measured calm, her silver hair catching the afternoon light from the windows. She looked to be in her late 60s, elegant without trying, carrying the quiet confidence of someone who had survived difficult years. Adrien straightened immediately. "Margaret." Claire looked between them. "You know her?" Adrien nodded once. "Margaret Hale was my mother's executive assistant." Margaret's eyes softened at the mention of Eleanor. "And her closest friend after Rose." Claire felt the brass key press against her palm. Margaret noticed it instantly. Her expression changed. Not surprise. Recognition. "So she found the letter," Margaret said quietly. Adrien took one step forward. "You knew?" Margaret looked toward the conference wing where distant voices still drifted through the estate. "Not here." She led them through a side door that opened into a smaller sitting room overlooking the gardens. Sunlight fell across old bookshelves and a stone fireplace that had not been used in years. Once the door closed, Margaret turned to Claire. "Your grandmother saved Eleanor Whitmore." Silence filled the room. Claire blinked. "Saved her from what?" Margaret lowered herself into an armchair slowly. 20 years ago, Whitmore International was preparing a merger that would have doubled the family fortune. Her voice remained calm, but sadness lived beneath every word. Eleanor discovered financial records hidden inside the company. Funds disappearing. Accounts moved. Charitable foundations being used as masks. Adrien went still. Margaret looked at him. She intended to expose it. Claire remembered the line from the letter. "Staying would have destroyed everything I was trying to protect." Margaret continued. Rose helped her collect evidence. Claire stared down at the perfume bottle in her hand. Suddenly every childhood memory felt different. Every locked drawer. Every unfinished sentence. What happened after that? Adrian asked quietly. Margaret looked toward the windows. The conservatory stood in the distance beyond the hedges. The night before Eleanor disappeared, she came to me carrying a wooden box. Her eyes returned to Claire. Inside were perfume bottles, documents, and 2 keys. Claire slowly opened her hand. The brass key glimmered in the light. Margaret nodded immediately. 1 key stayed with Eleanor. Her gaze moved to Claire's perfume bottle. The other went to Rose. Adrian frowned. Then why keep everything hidden? Margaret's expression softened painfully. Because Eleanor believed someone inside this family would destroy it. Silence again. Heavy. Outside, wind moved through the ivy around the old conservatory. Claire looked at Adrian. His face had gone pale. 20 years of questions now had shape. Direction. There is something else, Margaret said quietly. She reached into her purse and removed a folded photograph. Claire took it first. The image showed Eleanor and Rose standing inside the conservatory beside a stone table covered in flowers. Between them sat a little boy around 19 years old. Adrian. Smiling. And next to him stood a teenage girl Claire had never seen before. Written on the back in Eleanor's handwriting were 6 words. Keep them safe until they return. Claire looked up slowly. Who is she? Margaret met Adrian's eyes before answering. The girl who vanished with your mother. At that exact moment, voices exploded from the hallway outside. Raised voices. Fast footsteps. Then a shout echoed through the estate. Mr. Whitmore, someone opened the West Conservatory. Adrian was already moving before the words finished echoing through the hallway. Claire followed beside him, the brass key still tight in her hand while Margaret hurried behind them. They crossed the gardens beneath a sky turning silver with late afternoon clouds. Ivy climbed the glass walls of the old conservatory, but one section now stood open. The lock had been removed. Adrian slowed as they stepped inside. Dust floated through beams of sunlight. Dead vines wrapped around empty iron frames. In the center of the conservatory stood a stone table exactly like the one in the photograph. And beneath it, hidden by years of moss and fallen leaves, was a narrow wooden door built into the floor. Claire looked down at the brass key. It fit perfectly. The lock turned with a soft click. A small underground room waited below. Shelves lined the walls. Boxes. Ledgers. Files sealed in waterproof cases. And on the far side sat a cedar chest wrapped with cream ribbon. Claire knelt first. Inside were perfume bottles, handwritten journals, and one final envelope addressed simply to Adrian and the girl carrying the scent. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it. My beloved son, if you found this, then Rose kept her promise and kindness survived longer than fear. I did not disappear. I chose to leave until the truth could be protected. The records in this room prove everything. Use them only when you are ready to rebuild, not destroy. Adrian lowered the letter slowly. Margaret opened one of the ledgers nearby. Her eyes filled immediately. These are the financial records, she whispered. Everything Eleanor saved. Claire looked around the hidden room again. 20 years of silence had not vanished. It had simply been waiting. Adrian turned another page inside the envelope. A photograph slipped out. Eleanor stood smiling beside Rose. Between them was a teenage girl with bright eyes. On the back Eleanor had written, "Her name is Hannah. She is safe. One day she will come home too." Adrian closed his eyes briefly. Not grief this time. Relief. The kind that arrived after carrying something too heavy for too long. Above them footsteps sounded near the conservatory entrance. Security. Board members. Voices calling Adrian's name. But he did not move. Instead he looked at Claire. Really looked at her. You brought me here, he said quietly. Claire shook her head. No. Your mother did. A faint smile appeared for the first time since she met him. Small. Real. Outside, evening light settled over the estate gardens. Hours later, the Whitmore board meeting never resumed. The records remained protected. Margaret stayed. The conservatory lights glowed again for the first time in 2 decades. And before Claire left that night, Adrian walked her to the front steps of the estate. Wind moved softly through the trees around them. He held out the silver perfume bottle she had almost forgotten upstairs. "Keep it," he said. Claire smiled faintly. "It was always mine." Adrian looked at her for a long second. "No," he said quietly. "I think it was always meant to bring you here." Claire turned toward the waiting car, then paused. Behind her, the windows of the old conservatory shone warmly against the darkening sky. The place was no longer a tomb. It was a beginning. And somewhere in the night air, beneath autumn leaves and cold evening wind, jasmine still lingered.